Hello and welcome to episode 187 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Now joining me on today's episode is the co-vocalist and bassist from the outstanding band Alkaline Trio. I'm joined by the amazing Dan Andriano. On today's interview, we don't just focus on Alkaline Trio, we get to delve deep and talk all about his brand new solo record, which is out now and it's called Dear Darkness. In my opinion, each and every song on this album could easily be a single. It's full of sing-along choruses and what you'd expect from Dan. And right now, as it stands, it's my album of the year. I've had it on rotation since it came out last week and it's absolutely awesome from start to finish. So after today's interview, I urge you all to go and check it out, buy a copy on vinyl or CD or stream it, but listen to it and then let me know what you think. But before we get to today's interview with Dan Andriano, I want to touch base and talk about my last episode. On episode 186, I was joined by the actor and writer Steve Oram. We got to sit down and talk in detail about one of the greatest British films out there, Sightseers. The response was amazing and a massive thanks to everyone that listened. I've been receiving emails, tweets and Facebook DMs all week from people that now have discovered Sightseers and fell in love with this real dark comedy. So thanks everyone again for listening. But today it's all about Dan Andriano and his brand new album Dear Darkness. I'm going to get straight to it now, so here's me and Dan talking all things music. So Dan, thanks for taking the time to join me today on the Mark and Me podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is exciting.
What I wanted to do today, Dan, is start right at the beginning. Everybody remembers those first albums that they bought maybe as a kid, the pocket money or, doing jobs around the house to get that money together to buy those first albums. Can you remember when it was that you bought those first albums that you fell in love with that made you want to pick up a guitar or bass or just love music?
Yeah, I can actually. I had an older brother who was into music and into guitar. We both got a guitar at the same time. He was just a couple of years older than me, so we got a guitar that we were, supposed to share, and we both, actually stuck with it pretty well, which is surprising. But he, so he was into some classic rock, some 80s hair metal type stuff at the time. I was pretty young, so I was just into whatever he was into. But then, when I got into skateboarding, that's also when I really got into music that really started to speak to me, like punk rock and things like that. So the first albums that I was ever able to go buy with the little pocket money I did have were like 7 Seconds records.
Nice.
I think the first thing I ever bought on my own was a 7 Seconds record, and then the next thing I bought was I went to the tape store, different tape store, but I went with my friend Rich, and we each bought a cassette. He bought Misfits' Walk Among Us, and I bought Sex Pistols' Nevermind the Bollocks.
Wow.
And we got back to my house and popped the tabs out and recorded them for each other. So yeah, those were the kind of things that I started out with, for sure.
And can you remember the first sort of shows you went to? Because for me, when you see a live band for the first time, it's something that will stay with you forever. And can you remember the first kind of gig you went to?
There's the first big concert I went to, which was Men at Work with In Excess as the support band.
Wow.
It was probably, I'm trying to think, I was young, so I think I was like 8 or 9 at this concert. I must have been 9. So that really stuck with me. Like I loved those Men at Work songs like as a little kid, and one of my uncles took me, and I remember, this is before In Excess broke in America and became a huge band here. They were, like I said, they were the support band, but then, so that was like a big concert that I had really nothing to do with going to. Obviously, I was a small kid. And then a few years later, I went to a show, like a punk rock show at a hall that, just local kids put on in the town where I was going to high school. So at this point, I'm like 13. And that was the first time I saw a bunch of bands. It was like a weird, small, independent festival type thing where like 10 bands play, for 20 minutes each or whatever in this rented hall. And it pretty much just sounds horrible all day. But that was the first time I saw a band called the Smoking Popes that I really ended up turning into a huge fan of. First 7-inch I ever bought was their 7-inch. And that was a big part of me, like getting inspired to keep going to shows like that, which led me to, meeting people and being in bands and, various other stuff.
So were you in a number of bands growing up? Did you do the whole college band and doing stuff like Battle of the Bands and the stuff that everyone went through in the early days?
We didn't really do like Battle of the Bands, but we did things like that, like I was just describing, like rented halls
Yeah, the
or
all dayers.
people's houses, people's basements, or garages. We would do all that kind of stuff. And so we would, there was a pretty great scene outside of Chicago in the early 90s. I mean, through the 90s, before that, I'm sure. But what we became a part of in the band, I was in a couple bands, but the band that really put me on tour and put me on this trajectory was a band called Slapstick. And, we made friends with so many other bands from neighboring suburbs of Chicago that it was almost like every weekend, we would go, spur out to McHenry, which is where Matt Skiba was from, or like, then we go to Hoffman Estates or Arlington Heights and see a show. And then we, come back to Elgin the next weekend and someone would have a show going on. So it was always something happening and a lot of connections being made, even though it was just kids, mostly like high school kids.
It's incredible. And, to build upon that, at what point was it that you formed Alkaline Trio?
Well, so like I said, Matt was from a neighboring suburb, and as was Glenn, the original drummer.
Yeah.
And they started Alkaline Trio in 1996. And I was still in a band called Tuesday at the time that came out of Slapstick breaking up. And but Matt and I were friends. And at this point, everybody had kind of migrated to Chicago, to the actual city. And we were living in various neighborhoods around the city. But and then most of the shows were there at a point, this place called the Fireside Bowl or the Metro, which was slightly bigger. So everybody from these neighboring suburbs was now living downtown or trying to live downtown, and which was kind of cool, these connections that were made now still existing. But it was right around that time that I was moving downtown that Matt asked me to join the band, just like a year after he started the band, actually, with Glenn. And they had a different bass player. His name was Rob. And, and they were great. I'd seen him a couple times. Our bands had played together. And Matt and I were, quickly becoming pretty good drinking buddies. And he knew that I wanted to tour pretty much constantly and really try to make a go at this for real. And, I guess he just, he didn't feel like Rob was willing to leave college as abruptly and things like this. So that's when I joined, was like mid 97.
So did it just feel that the moment you started playing with those guys, that was it? Something clicked, it was different to the other bands? Did it just feel like this is what you were meant to be doing?
Yes, that was it. I mean, and I think we all felt it. Like, it was pretty great. Like, we played through a couple songs and we all three just started giggling, it was funny.
It's a good feeling.
Yeah, it was a great feeling. And it was very different and just fun and easy. And then the more we started playing together, the easier the songs started to come, and the more sense everything started to make. Pretty great.
And how do you feel like with bands that you look around now, so many bands break up or go on hiatus, but the fact that you guys have been going over for 2 decades, which is scary, it's approaching the 3rd decade, and you're still doing stuff, you're still pals, you're still enjoying what you do, and you're still loving it. What do you think it is that makes you still feel so fresh for it?
I mean, I think deep down we just still really love it. Like, I don't think we're done. I'm not done.
No.
I mean, clearly I can't stop getting myself into projects, but like, I mean, it's something that Matt and I always talked about. Like, when it stopped being fun, when it stopped being something that we truly loved, we would stop doing it. And that just hasn't happened. Um, there's a festival coming up here in the States, actually. Uh, and it's a big, it's getting a lot of press. There's a lot of bands from the 90s playing, and it's called the When We Were Young Festival. I was doing an interview like this, or podcast last week, and the person asked me how it felt to be part of like this nostalgia festival.
Yeah.
And I honestly hadn't even really thought about it. Like, I guess that's how people are looking at it. But I mean, I look at the thing, and I see there's a lot of bands that are like from that era, but a lot of them, like mine on that poster, we're still very active, and we still do it all the time. It's not like we're getting back together to go play this festival and be a part of this nostalgia. So I don't want to say I was like offended, because that would completely be the wrong word, but I was a little bit just confused. I was like, well, I guess it's nostalgic. I mean, but it's sure, we're old. This is when, when we were young, all these bands were busy, but I'm still busy. I never stopped trying to do this. So I thought that was kind of interesting, the take on it, but I don't care. It's gonna be fun. I know that.
Just come back and do it when there's a when we were old. Do it in like 20 years time.
Yes. Hey, look, now we're old.
They'll be still with like you and Jimmy Eat World, and you'll all be like 70 years old trying to play guitars.
Sure. Why not? The fucking Rolling Stones do it.
Exactly. I mean, why not?
That's just it. Like I guess my point in that long-winded answer was that I'm still doing it. Like I never really stopped. I don't foresee that happening anytime soon. Like I know we've been doing it for a while, and when I look back upon it, it seems like it does seem like, damn, that was a long time ago, and almost a lifetime ago, really, because I feel like a completely different person than I was when I joined this band in the late 90s. And I think it'd be weird if I wasn't at least a little bit of a different person. But yeah, I don't foresee it stopping. I mean, Matt and I are texting, well, he was texting me late last night, but I mean, we've got song ideas flying around, and we've got talk of writing and recording and all kinds of stuff that we'll be up to after we come do this UK tour here in a few weeks.
And with your obviously experience of being in lockdown, nobody ever knew this was going to happen, that we all kind of got like a 18-month.
I knew.
Stop. Did you know? Did you?
Yes.
You were there. You had a crystal ball. You were like, I'm going to go in 2001 and have a year and a half off.
No, I'm just kidding. I sort of unintentional, good creativity time, right?
Yeah. It's like a good time to catch up on stuff that you've been probably meaning to finish or to start. But you took it to a whole new level, because you didn't just sit on your ass and watch Netflix and read books. You decided to think about doing some covers for an EP that then matured into an album.
That's right. I had dug up a couple old ideas, and like you said, I was kind of coming out of my skin. And so I got convinced by my wife, and who wanted me to go and do something just to try to get away and do what I do. And she knows that I need to do that. And Mike at Asian Man, he doesn't own the studio, but he has access to a studio there that he can pretty much put me in, place I'd worked before. So when I went out to San Jose basically just on that idea that I would record what I had, which might end up being an EP, maybe do a couple covers. I had a concept of like an EP of covers that would sort of have a theme to it, but I ended up just wanting to keep working on the originals because everything started going really well. It's crazy.
Did it ever really feel that like you planned for an EP, but at what point was it just the fact you had so much material? It was like, well, this is more than an EP now. Like, do we do 2 EPs, or is this just straight away an album? Because you never knew what you were setting yourself up for, did you?
No, I didn't. And I didn't even know Randy and Dylan, but Randy being the guitar player and Dylan being the drummer, they are brothers. All I knew was that Mike told me they were fantastic musicians, and they were really nice guys. And they're a little younger than me, but they would be psyched to work, just be in the studio and play and try whatever. And I mean, Mike was exactly right on all accounts, but I didn't account for the fact that they're just so good at music and they just love all kinds of music, like classic rock. We got to, talk about, they listen to everything. And it's very surprising as I get older, to see that there's still people that are getting into all genres of rock and classic rock going back, way back. And I think that's awesome, especially because everything's accessible. You've really got no excuse these days. But they were, once I realized that they were, how capable they were, the songs just started finishing themselves. Like, if I had a couple ideas that I'd sent them, and so we started running through those, and they were just some rough demo ideas I had, and we started going through that, and everything just started going really well and falling into place. So I started thinking about other ideas I had, or kind of even coming up with new things. I was just able to open up all sorts of doors and finish up lots of things. And just, usually lyrically I get hung up a little bit, so I'll have like a song written, but I've really only got like 30 or 50% of the words done to where I'm happy with them. And that can be a struggle for me sometimes, because I get really hung up on that, and making sure, and what in my opinion is okay for me to be squawking out there. But it just started to flow out. I would be like, oh, this is cool. Okay, wait, I don't need to get hung up on a bridge. We can just do this, and then we can stretch this part out, and then, oh, I'm gonna go finish writing the words. And I would come back in like a half hour, and we would have the song done. And it's interesting how I wouldn't even say when the pressure's on, but when I'm like thrust into this situation, and everyone's on the same page and just psyched and wanting to play and try different ideas, like we got a lot done in kind of a short amount of time. It's very, very fun.
And working with two different people and having different dynamics and different kind of personalities, did it feel like there was no expectations of what the song should sound like? Did it feel like you were more free to just have no rules involved?
Absolutely. And that sort of became a mantra in there, was no rules. Because I love so much different kinds of music. And if I feel like I just want to hear Randy shred a guitar solo for 2 minutes, that's what I'm going to want to put in there. And so we tried a lot of different stuff, and I think the record actually sounds very cohesive, but it's very it's also dynamic. I wanted to not be afraid to let the record go up and go down. There's moments like on the song Wrong where it really gets taken down to a somber and quiet kind of mode. And then, there's moments like the Excess, which is almost like bar, straight up bar rock. And that's kind of what we ultimately were going for. So I'm pretty psyched on that. But it all, in my opinion, kind of flows. And that was with the help of, Randy and Dylan, for sure. Like being who they are and they play together all the time. So they're kind of locked in. When they groove well together, which is important. And I was just able to kind of sit back and produce for certain moments. Let Randy play bass on, but ask Randy to play bass on songs, so I wasn't playing all the bass and falling into my own familiar trappings or familiar like fills and having it sound too much like Alkaline Trio or
Yeah.
just something familiar. So I really wanted it to be a different thing. And also knowing that when I tour, it will be a full band, and it will sound big. So I wanted to open the door for like some jam moments as well.
And it's a very intimate album with a track obviously for your wife and another for your daughter.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Um,
Is it something that you wanted to get across on this album, or did it just happen without kind of even thinking?
well, there's the lyric in that song, Into Your Dream, um, is something that I was toying with a long time ago, actually. Uh, but it was more of like a poem that I wrote for her when she was, I want to say like maybe like 7 or 8. And it was part of a school thing for her. But I had a melody for it. And then it was probably during the pandemic when I really started messing with it and actually putting guitar to it. And then I came up with what I thought were just really pretty chords and almost like a lullaby. And then it just came together so good. I got to play upright bass in that studio, which was very fun and very cool. Thanks to Randy for driving around with that upright bass in his car. That was awesome. Sounds. I just love the way that song turned out. I played the guitar intro, the guitar lead at the very top, and that line has been kind of married to that part since I wrote the song. I've always really liked that line, but then I wanted Randy to play solo later in the song, which he does, and I was pretty psyched on my tone at the beginning, and then when he comes in later, it's just like, oh, so good, and then really makes my tone sound pretty amateur. But I was uh, I was so pleased when he played that part. I was like, damn, Randy, that's pretty perfect.
And you've already said today that, when this goes on tour, you're going to have a whole set of musicians and take it all out and, show the people these
Yeah,
songs live. Now, did you keep this in mind when you were recording and producing that, you didn't want it to sound too different from the band and the shows that people were going to go and see? Because sometimes you see a band and they sound nothing like the album.
right. Um, yeah, I mean that's a tough thing to try to get over, a tough hump, I guess. Alkaline Trio ends up when we use a lot of like keyboards or piano stuff, and we end up using like a sampler just for that stuff, but then we've got to play to that or make sure it's all in time and it's interesting, but it sounds good and it sounds weird without it. But I mean, this being like a band where I want to be able to jam a little more and just open up, uh, yeah, I mean, it's definitely something I thought about, and I knew I was digging myself into a little bit of a hole, but one that I'm excited to be in, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, because the band is going to be, I mean, the band is great. We rehearsed actually a little bit ago, and it was very exciting. Unfortunately, I wasn't feeling too great, but just being in the room with everybody and hearing everything was pretty killer. When
Are we
is
going
this going to? Because I can tell you who's in the band.
It's going to air next week. So the album's
Oh
out
yeah,
on the
so
11th. So I'll put it out on
it's
the,
all announced.
like,
Yeah,
Monday.
I'm very excited. I'm taking Derek Grant from Alkaline Trio to play drums. Randy will be there playing guitar. Kayla Gonzalez, who's in Get Married and Pity Party, will be there playing bass. She's in the video for Dear Darkness, actually. And then our new friend Nick O'Connor from Fremont, California, will be playing keys. And I'll be there singing and playing guitar. It's going to be ripping. Everybody's so good and just so excited to be playing. I'm psyched. I'm psyched to go to them all. I'm psyched to play these songs. Like, it's going to be cool.
There's a lot of people that will be listening today that are in bands, and with the way that the world is and everything is streaming now, I mean, vinyls are selling well, but, bands need to get out there and play. That's the way you're going to
Yeah.
make a living. What advice do you give to anyone that is starting out, that hasn't had 25 years like you with Alkaline Trio and other bands, but are trying to get noticed? What advice do you give to these people in a day that's so different to when you used to start it out, in the 90s?
I mean, that's the $1 million question, I guess. Because it's hard. I guess that's the answer, is it's hard work. I mean, you really have to put yourself out there. You got to not be afraid to try, the things that you really want to try. And just get out there and try to tour. Like, I think maybe a little bit like social media and things, as they developed and gotten so big, they've really helped independent musicians quite a bit get their name and stuff out there. But you can't rely solely on that.
No.
You got to get out there and you got to play shows, and sometimes you got to play empty rooms, and you just got to pretend they're not empty, and and do your best. That's because it's all, every time you play, and this is something that I wish I would have known a long time ago, but it's like, you got to remember, every time you play, it's the show for someone, you know what I mean? And so it's always a good idea just to try to have your best show.
I love it. And you've mentioned the tour. Have we got any idea if we'll see you in Europe or in the UK with your solo project?
We don't know. I mean, I'm working on it,
Yeah.
but we don't know yet. So here's the thing, like, when I go, I kind of want to do it up and make it like a full run. So as now more than ever, it's it's hard to get in and out of places. Europe is a factor, just, being different rules and protocols for UK and Europe and different countries within Europe. So, and I can't be going there and then coming back and then going back to the EU or whatever at some different point. So I'm trying to book a big old thing, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
But it might take just a little bit of time to get that figured out.
You should have just taken some extra instruments and friends and then just been the main support for Alkaline Trio.
That would be exhausting.
It sounds good, but
yeah, maybe good in theory. But again, see, getting back to what I'm just saying, that would not enable me to put forth my best show for either act.
Yeah.
So, but man, a support band for someone else would be great. I'll be over there in a heartbeat. I'll bring a whole band. I mean, it would have to be the right group, I suppose. But yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. But I want to get over there and do it right,
Yeah. When the time's right and things have gone a bit back to normal with the COVID and venues are being able to just be venues again and travel's normal, then I'm sure it won't be that long till you're here.
Hallelujah.
My final question for you, and it's never easy for anyone that comes on that's in a band, but I make sure and try and keep the podcast as original as I can by asking the artist that's on to choose the outro piece of music to today's episode. Now, it doesn't have to be one of your own, and most people like to choose something different, but today we've had an interview, it's all wrapped up, it's edited, and it's about to go out. You can choose the closing track to this podcast. It can be any song by any band in the whole world. It's tough, and I think people in bands find it hard because they want to choose so many different songs. But when I ask the question, what's that kind of song that comes to your heart and soul that you think would be the perfect outro for today?
That is a really hard question. I bet you hear that every time.
Yeah, and then I edit it to make it sound like you've chosen it in like 30 seconds, but some people are like, give me the fucking 10 minutes.
I can't decide. Let me see. I think a good song to go out on. Damn, I bet, do a lot of people pull out their phone and like look at shit?
Yeah, on Spotify, and they're going through lists and songs that meant a lot to them. But it can be any song in the world. But
I'm just
it's
trying to go
one.
a little bit off the cuff here, but I can never think of anything. Let's say "Believe" by My Morning Jacket.
Oh, amazing! Did it just come to your head then? Were you just thinking that's the one?
Yeah, I like the sentiment, and it's such a good song.
There you go. See, it wasn't too stressful.
No, I feel good about it.
Good.
I was trying to not dig too deep, because if I start getting into like, what am I trying to send a big message? with this one pick. I mean, I'm just trying to have a nice outro for your podcast. It's a fucking beautiful song.
There you go. And that's all it needs to be.
Power and melody. Awesome. Thanks, Mark.
Dan, thanks for coming on. I wish you all the luck. I've heard Dear Darkness. I've been lucky enough to have an advance copy, and I genuinely mean this. It's fucking awesome. So I can't wait to see it live.
Oh, man. I thank you very much.
You can stick that on your poster. You can say, Mark and Me Podcast, fucking awesome.
Fucking awesome. I
Simple.
love it.
But honestly, I look forward to you guys coming over. I'll try and get some tickets to Alkaline Trio, and if I can see you, I'll have a beer. And honestly, I wish you all the luck with everything with the album, because it's awesome, and I can't wait to see people's reactions.
Right on. Thanks, Mark.
So there it is. There's my interview with me and Dan Andriano. I want to say a huge thanks for Dan for taking the time out to come on the show and talk all about Alkaline Trio and your brand new album, Dear Darkness. It's an amazing album, and it's one of those albums that when you listen to it for the first time, it feels so familiar straight away. It's like you've listened to this band for years and years, and that's what you expect with Dan. It's so good. You'll find some killer hooks on it and some great choruses, so go and check it out as soon as this episode finishes. I truly mean it. We might only be in February, but right now it's my album of the year. But if you do go and listen to the album, please share your thoughts with me. I love reading people's feedback, and especially people that discover new bands from this podcast. It's the ultimate compliment that I can get. All the links to my social media are on markandme.com. There's my Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and I make sure I personally reply to every message that I get sent. I really appreciate everyone listening today, and if you really enjoyed today's episode, hit that share button. Hit that like button or hit the retweet button on Twitter. Sharing the episode is the best marketing that I can do and costs me absolutely nothing and costs you guys at home nothing. It really is a key to bringing a whole new audience to Mark and Me and goes a long, long way. So please, if you've enjoyed today's episode, hit that share button. It goes so far. Also, I do have a Patreon account set up. On there, you can support the podcast for as little as £1 every month. At the moment, you're getting 3 episodes every single week for that, for nothing. But also you get some opportunities to win some fantastic prizes for supporting the podcast. Thanks to my friends at Richer Sounds, Last Exit to Nowhere and Vice Press, I have some incredible stuff to give away each and every month. So please go on that link, it's on markandme.com, and any support goes right back into the podcast and allows me to go out there and record more interviews, which means more episodes for you guys at home. It's not slowing down anytime soon. I believe right now this month is my biggest I've ever done in 5 years of podcasting. I've had some incredible guests so far, and the next week or two is going to be another level. So stay tuned on all my social media channels over the next few days to discover who these guests are going to be. And in the meantime, look after yourself, take care, and I'll speak to you all soon.
Time to roll, the answer floats on down the farthest shore of the mind. Roll the dice to sail the ship and all the doors will open on down the line. Turn to roll the lesson learned and then forgotten over in our time. In that moment I awoke among the smoke and me.